Okay.
Victor, what are we talking about today?
Look, we are talking about f-stop, aperture, f1.2, 1.4, 2.8. I can keep on naming. But that's what we're talking about today. But I had a specific question on TikTok from somebody who asked, every time I take pictures, the whole thing isn't in focus. At first I was like, oh, it's just a focusing issue. And then I thought about it more. No, it's not that it's a focusing issue. It's that we don't know what f-stop and aperture does and how it affects your image. So what is your aperture? Aperture is that opening in your lens that lets light enter your camera. And it's calibrated in f-stops, hence is why we call it f2.8, f1.8. So a simple way to understand this is just think about how your eyes work. As you move in between bright and dark places, your pupil literally expands or shrinks to compensate the light entering so you can see. That is an easy way to understand what aperture is. So I have a Canon 24-105 lens right here. Usually if we open up the lens, let it focus. If you look right here, you see 1, 4. That 4 is the aperture. So that means that this can only stop down to 4. As the videographer, cinematographer, photographer, you know what the image you want looks like. You have a vision in your head and the f-stop will help you achieve that. So if you're looking for nice shallow depth of field, of course you're gonna have to have a aperture that is more wide open. So the smaller the aperture number, the wider, the more open your lens is. You're letting more light in. That's why it's better at low light, because you can literally see the aperture open up. Boom, that is the aperture. This is literally what an aperture is. This is at f16. You see how small that is? We're not letting light in. So when it's bright outside, you have to stop the aperture to f22, f11 so that we don't let as much light hit the sensor. That's literally all the aperture does. It allows light to hit your sensor from the lens. So when it's low light, when it's nighttime outside, you want a aperture that is fast. That means that it can get wide open like this. This is letting a lot more light in than this. This is 1.8, this is f16. So when it comes to shooting, it's all about what do you want? Do you want a shallow depth of field? Do you want everything in focus? It all depends. Because if you want everything in focus, you're gonna have to have a lot more light, especially if you're indoors. You see what I mean? Okay, as you see, we are focused on Canon zoom lens. We are at f2.8. And as you see, I mean, we're on the same object, but even if you look like right here, the lower the aperture number is, the more depth of field we have. As you see, the background is completely knocked out. You don't see any details in the background, and even the lens itself is blurry. You can't focus on all of it. We're gonna close our aperture a little bit and see what happens. So this is at f8.0, and as you notice, we are still focused on Canon zoom. But this time, the entire lens is in focus. We can see almost everything around that lens. And then, if you notice, look in the background. It's not as blurry, it's not knocked out. This is again because we're at f8, which means there is more depth of field than if we're at a lower number like f2.8. And this is all just knowing exposure. If everything isn't in focus in your photo and you're as low as you can go, your f-stop is at f2.8, f3, that is because your aperture is too low. If you want everything in focus, you're gonna have to crank your lights up or add more lights in order to close your aperture. If you want to remain the best quality of photo and you don't want to touch anything else on your exposure triangle, which will be another video, remember, the lower that number, the more depth of field you have. The higher the number, the less depth of field. The lower the number, the more light you let into your lens. The higher the number, the less light you let into your camera. If this video helped you, please like, comment, and subscribe, and I will be doing another video on exposure triangle because I feel like that is a necessary piece to this equation, and if you're a true beginner, you're not going to understand all of it until you understand ISO and shutter speed and why you might want to leave those alone. Exposing a camera has a lot of rules, but at the end of the day, you can break those rules once you understand everything and how everything is coming into play. So again, if you like this video, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Thank y'all.